stuff like the Renegade Cup and everything else, and obviously the Rival Series, which by no means do I think the Rival Series should ever come back. I think the circuit-based format, what it is now, is absolutely fantastic. I love the fact that top tier and bottom tier can play each other at any given point. There's always that chance every 2 weeks to compete. That stuff is fantastic, but it is really frustrating that there is, while people are playing in the main event, there is nothing for the secondary leagues, like teams that are ranked to like 17 to 32-ish to play in. They have an off week and then they come back, they get one more chance, and then an off week. It just keeps going back and forth, right? And this has been doubled down even more. One of the players in particular who has kind of seen that ascendancy is Flitz. And if you guys don't know Flitz recently played in the Gamers 8 tournament, got his first LAN experience and debut, which was really, really cool for him. But he actually put out a tweet that was pretty surprising to see. Even though he's playing for All Mid and stuff, which is a team that's been pretty competitive, I would say. Like I would put them as like a gatekeeping team of getting into the top 16. They're right on that cusp. They get into the main event, but then they don't really win anything. Like they'll be competitive. But the difficulty is he put out a tweet that is really unfortunate to see, and it's got me with more questions. If you didn't see his tweet, he ended up putting out something saying the Rocket League's tag system, or the titles in game, is the best and unique way players can show their achievements, which is true. After a really tough season, or after you've competed and everything else, getting those like iconic like blue titles are really important. They show you or give you an accolade in game. It is direct recognition from the developer saying, hey, you've worked hard, you've accomplished something, here you go. And apparently, and again, this is not confirmed, this has not been made public, this is not something that we have seen 100% been like, yep, we at Psyonix agree that these things will not happen anymore. But according to Flitz, he said that they're only going to give tags to the top 2 in regionals. Like, unless you get to a grand final in regionals, you have nothing to show for it. That applies towards majors and everything else. I don't know if that's going to apply to the World Championship coming up here in a week and a half, but you're basically going to neglect teams unless they're in the grand finals of regionals, majors. I don't know about World Championship. World Championship, I hope they give titles to all 16 teams, or all 24 teams, wild card or otherwise. Which he then goes on to say more. He says, yo, this basically makes placing top 16 obsolete. Like, you're giving top 16 team tags last season, allowed for teams to show off their hard work and improvement. There's more to RLCS than a tag, but a lot of players aim for top 16 or higher for that tag or title, providing that pro status. And taking away those tags, titles, outside of anything like top 5 is basically irrelevant. Like, it used to be a versatile game with so much amount of exclusive tag given for something, whether it be ESL weeklies way back when I first started, X Games titles, unique events, even like the Ford Freestyle show matches or the Gridiron Games tournaments are getting titles, while RLCS pros are not. And this kind of came into fruition, or this thought process came to be, because he's like, maybe we can see this for Gamers 8 to warrant some tags, or at least, you know, at least Furia will get one for winning. But he said it a lot, but he really hopes that Psyonix doesn't completely abandon the title system, because I haven't seen any game with a system this unique for showing achievements. With a recent reluctance to not give any titles at all, I hope they rethink and change their ideology on giving titles to teams. So this conversation has kind of gone through a couple different iterations, and the most recent conversation that I think probably gave the best insight to this is actually there's a podcast with Karma, Kronovi, special guest, and then usually they bring someone else on for a relevant topic, and then Sleegy is the one running the production in the background. Sleegy, who has done like CRL, part of the beat stream and stuff, as well as been a community caster and has been in the scene for quite a while, has actually gone through this. And the conversation went in like 3 or 4 different ways on that podcast. I'll try to link that down below so you guys can go watch it, because they have a dedicated section on it, which is really important. But the frustration is, apparently, from what I've heard, this is kind of outside of the hands of specific departments in Psyonix. There is a tags/titles department within the company, and they are there to dictate what titles are and are not released, who gets them, approval, etc. So like the RL esports team has to go to the titles team, submit, yo, these titles need to be issued, and then they decide if that happens, which is kind of weird. So that in itself is kind of like, I mean, you're allocating time and okay, like, I'm trying to be as unbiased about this as possible, but I have a lot of complications with it. Not only do I have, yeah, the Rocket League DMV. I think that's a perfect name for it. That's actually hilarious. It's the Psyonix DMV. That's their title. I don't know. And apparently DMV's got to live up to the DMV stigma, apparently. There's a couple like parts of this that I don't understand. They used to, number one, give these titles out in the past. Like, these titles that they were giving out was not something that they were shied away from in the past. Like, these were things that they were already doing and no longer are. And it got down to the conversation of them not being afraid to remove titles as well. Like, for anybody who doesn't know, way back during like the SART BC days, the forums, which forums are kind of a thing of the past now, but like the Rocket League forums were very popular, and the people that helped out with that stuff and were really interactive with it got a moderator title in game. And a lot of people, including like Cloud Fuel, who's like one of the OGs that is like a sole reason why Rocket League esports exists, no longer has that title. Like, they took some of those things away, which is really weird. People that were less active in the community, so they're removing some titles. They're done issuing some titles that were already in implementation. And then I also, to try to play devil's advocate, I don't know how difficult it is, like the process of like giving a title. I don't know how difficult it is to code that into a game or to do that, which I don't think is probably that much, considering they do it every single season with GC titles for everybody in the community who hits that moment. Like, I think issuing a title is probably one of the easiest things to implement in the game, allegedly. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know the complication of like the spaghetti code that is Unreal Engine 3 and how much it breaks, but giving a tag or a title in game, I don't think is that complicated. And when you're a pro player, and Flitz brings this up, and I think it's a perfect conversation, is you look at a team like Oxygen. Oxygen is a team that was struggling. They get gimmick from version 1. They place top 6 3 times and are arguably like a top 7 team, top 8 team in all of North America. And they have literally nothing to show for it. Nothing. The accomplishments of Oxygen and their run, their storyline, everything. There is not a single thing identifying them for those accomplishments unless you go to like Liquipedia or otherwise. When in the past, they were issued a title of being like, yo, you're a contender, you're a this, you're a that. Like, you made a main event back to back to back. You were one series-ish away from making a major, and you have nothing to show for it, which is kind of weird. Like, there's certain things that Rocket League Esports is doing a phenomenal job of, right? And I don't even think this is a Rocket League Esports thing. I think this is a different department, and I don't know where to, like, shift the focus on, like, who do we discuss or who do we talk to, but I think it's really important. Like, think about, you're a amateur player or semi-pro, whatever you want to classify this as. You're an aspiring pro. You're trying to make it into the main stage of the RLCS consistently, which is ironically, even if you do, you still don't get a title apparently. But you are an aspiring pro, you grind really hard, you make it to the main event consistently, and you have nothing to show for it. And the reason why this is important, and this is some of the insight that Flitz really provided that was great, is he talks about how this kind of stuff is used when it comes to providing like validity to organizations. When you are a pro, semi-pro, and you are like, hey, I need to be able to showcase that my accomplishments matter, having direct like involvement from the developer, like that title is a status symbol. It is a thing saying, hey, these people have accomplished something that is extremely, like, these are the 0.001% of all players. And it's like, is that why SSL tags were given? And now they're reducing how many they give out this way. But like, I don't understand the reason to reduce how many tags are given out. Like, obviously there needs to be prestige to it, but they already existed. Like, contender, like RLCS season whatever contenders were group stage contestants. Elite was top 8. Grand finalist was second, and then world champion was obviously the winners. Like, there was 4 titles that were previously given in different accolades, which made sense. And there's been a lot of conversation about like titles in general for like content creators, because people will be like even I have literally the RLCS analyst tag, and people still ask me if I'm real, and I'm like, it's a tag, like it says RLCS analyst, like what other Lawler is out there that is real or not? Or maybe people are just in disbelief that I'm that low ranked. I don't know what it is. But content creators have been asking for like titles to like give that confirmation of like, yes, you are talking to the real one. It helps with like impersonations, all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't think the content creators, I probably don't think that you need a title for that. Like, I personally don't think content creators should get titles myself, but finding some way to, and this was the conversation they had on the podcast, in other games they have a way to build in an API with a Twitch link. So like it'll show next to the name like the little Twitch logo, and then you can click on that creator's name and it'll actually pull you to their stream. That way you can have proof like, yes, I am that person. It links to my thing, which is implemented into a bunch of different games. In part of this conversation on the podcast, they did have Supersonic, who used to be OG with H1Z1, and like even back in H1Z1 they had that kind of implementation. So being able to link or associate account in game to that kind of stuff is really weird to get rid of this accomplishment. And for the big picture and for the importance of it, you don't have supporting like tournaments. And it seems like Psyonix has done a really good job of like multiple steps. They've done a really good job of supporting the broadcast talent and the casters, which I think they're in for a world of hurt coming up soon, just because there's so many of them and I don't know who's going to be able to stick around. Like the amount that they're paying these casters and stuff, there is so many people on staff that there's going to be some churn here shortly, unless they do an NA and an EU broadcast team and stuff. Like even still, there's a lot of commentators. It's a lot of money being allocated. I don't know if the budget's going to be able to sustain that, but I do think compensation for broadcast talent has gotten really good. That's step one. You've got obviously the pros. The pros have so many tournaments to play in. There's a ton of money involved. Like it's a $6 million prize pool. There is things to do if you are a high level team. Like if you're a top 8 team in either region, you're doing fine. Next step I think they need to focus on is obviously efficiency, which they have done a good job even from season X to 21-22 with reducing how many tournaments there are, getting rid of the grid, simplifying some things. That can always get better. You know, there's a lot of burnover rate and a lot of turnover rate. People are getting burnt out from watching 3 regionals with 1 billion lives in every single regional, and then all those regionals then go, like, it's a lot. So simplifying some things can help. That's something that they're always improving on. And then the next one is making sure that you support the upcoming scene. And I have 2 solutions for that. Number 1, providing a way to showcase those tournaments. I do not know why there is not official broadcasts for the qualifiers. Yes, a lot of the qualifiers are going to be one-sided, and yes, they do allow some of these teams to stream their runs. But you have the ability to, with official qualifiers, to help and basically like try to give life to up-and-coming talent. So you have casters, production teams, etc., the chance to experiment and see like who's blossoming. It also provides and showcases some of the upcoming amateur scenes. Like there is ways to showcase and build up your next step. And I think that's the next thing they really need to focus on, in addition to obviously simplifying and making things more consistently. But the bubble scene, the amateur scene, whatever you want to call it, semi-pro, needs some love to make sure it fosters new talent in every capacity, whether it be production, whether it be tournament organizers, whether it be players, casters, whatever. And getting rid of tags is just kind of the like very beginning of that. And it's really weird to see, considering these titles were given in the past. So I am interested to see on what they're going to do for the World Championship here in a week and a half. And if titles are still going to be provided in the same way with contender, elite, grand finalists, world champs, what that's going to look like, how that's going to apply. Because honestly, I don't know. And I'm a little worried about what it means. I don't know. The process for getting some titles approved is like instantaneous. And then there's other ones where it's like, I think it took like the CRL B stream guys like 2 years to get their title. I don't know. It's a really weird conversation. I'll have links to all of these in the description down below, both to Flitz's thread on Twitter, the conversation on the thread on Reddit, as well as the podcast with Karma and Kronovi. I gotta remember what that it's like something first touch or something, or whatever what's it called? Not first touch. That's the other one. Off the post. But I'll have a link to their VOD and stuff. And like, I would highly recommend going through. They have a dedicated section. They bring in Flitz. They talk about it. And it's a really healthy conversation. So I just thought it's kind of important. But it is something that I hope allows these players to distinguish themselves and add validity as like a stamp of Psyonix approval. Like, yes, you are of value to the scene. What you're doing is important. And I think Oxygen is the obvious point out. Like Oxygen situation, what they've done, and to show nothing for it in game when they used to in the past is like kind of like the low-hanging fruit of like, oh, obviously this is important. But for a lot of these other teams, that are in that like 8 to 16 range, nothing. Like nothing to show for it, which is kind of rough because it does carry through. Will pro teams scrim against you? Will they practice against? There's a lot of gatekeeping. It's crazy to me. So hopefully that stuff ends up getting a little bit more love put into it, because it is really important for making sure the longevity of the scene stays alive. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know if there's anything else or any other kind of insight that you have in the comments down below, your thoughts on it, as I do think this stuff is really, really important. But with that said, it's going to do it for today's video. If you guys enjoy the content, as always, consider giving it a like, hitting subscribe, turn on notifications so you guys do get notified of the next video. And we'll see you tomorrow for another one. Peace.